took a woodworking class in junior high school. As it turns out, I probably should have taken shop in high school, but I learned it at Lansing Community College, and a good friend of mine, John Wilson, was my inspiration in woodworking, and I took as many classes as I could through him, and he inspired me, and I give him credit for the vast knowledge that he shared with me and helped me advance in my woodworking skills. I am Larry Tkaczyk. I live in Charlotte, Michigan. My hobbies are, of course, woodworking. Well, we're at the Home Shop in Charlotte, Michigan, and they are the producers of materials for making shaker boxes. And my home is about 5 minutes away between Charlotte, Michigan, and Eaton Rapids, Michigan. I come from an even smaller town, so I liked Charlotte. It wasn't far from work.
We're at the Acapulco Mexican Grill in Charlotte. That's Charlotte, not Charlotte. I think there's about 8,000 people here, just west of Lansing, Michigan. We just stay to ourselves when I work there much. I think I'm just going to get tacos and margaritas. Gotta have a margarita.
Another good thing, they have a full-service wood store here in Charlotte. Johnson's Workbench. When you get ready to retire, you have all these plans on what you're going to do. And, I always heard from people that I don't know how I had time to work when I worked. And I worked 60 to 80 hours a week for about 15 years, and I had absolutely no time. So it's like I told everybody that it's going to take me 5 years to catch up on the things that I wanted to do when I had to work those hours. And I underestimated those 5 years. But one of my first projects was I recited our house. And then the next year I got into the shaker boxes and made a bunch of those to give out as gifts. And then last year I worked on a major deck project. This year I'm going to end up building a pergola. I do handyman stuff. I do as much as I can, but I'm slow. and that doesn't go over well. But I've always taken pride in doing that kind of thing, so it's hard to get that out of me. I just have to try to fix something myself. Prior to taking classes at Lansing Community College, I was more like most average person that tries to do something. You just buy the tools and you just do it, and not without really learning all the really important stuff. I was going to Lansing Community College. I wanted to pursue skilled trades at General Motors, and so I was taking all the prerequisites that the trades guys took to get into skilled trades, and in the meantime I saw I'm going to take some woodworking classes and try to get more knowledgeable on that. And I ran into my friend John Wilson there, and I knew right away this guy is the man. And his knowledge was so great that I took as many classes as I could from him, and I started to understand it more seriously than the average person. And in my lifetime, when I come across people that say they do woodworking, you can differentiate the people that just think it's about buying tools. But the more you realize there's a lot more to it. And I try to learn as much as I can. I go down to our local library and I get as many woodworking books as I can to try to teach myself. Like right now I'm trying to learn wood turning. It's like anything else. When you learn something, it's like, okay, if it comes up, you'll have that in your toolbox to I can make that now. I know how to use a lathe. I usually like smaller type projects, probably primarily because that's all I have is a small shop. It's pretty full of unfinished projects, so there's not a lot of room, but it's really comfortable for me to get down there in my own little environment, like kind of like a scientist in his lab, and put things out. But recently, I did the shaker boxes a couple years ago. I make ping pong paddles. I find that I'm more interested in the process of making something rather than the end result. So when it comes to these ping pong paddles, my main focus is to develop a process which I can share with other people so that it would make it easier for them to make one. That's kind of my direction that I like. And like even the wood turning, I'm kind of still learning how to make a pepper mill, and it's really important which process you use first, drilling the holes, and so each time I make one, I'm trying to figure out an easier way of doing it. Now, this is a number 7 carrier. This is actually the first one I made. I've made the other style, but I haven't. This is the first time I did the divided. I like this better. And this is the traditional nesting set of shaker boxes. All go into each other. And what they originally used these for, the shakers, this was before Tupperware. Shakers were like 1800s, religious community. Recently I've got into turning this. I made like a little jewelry dish for my wife to put on the dresser. And I've been working at the details of these pepper mills. I learned how to make these spoke shaves right here in this shop, and I use them for making these ping pong paddles to take the wood down till you feel like it fits in your hand just right. Here's a creation I did. This is my idea here. I call this a pistol grip. For this paddle style, I put the finger up here, and then I can do the same thing. And most of the guys at the table tennis club won't want to try this, but it's not as far off as you think it is. It was just a crazy idea that I had, and hey, I can play with it. Like I said before, the process is what I'm really interested in, and I think I have a process for making these paddles that would be easy enough for anybody to do. This project was years ago. I saw this in a fine woodworking magazine. I thought, I got to make this for my mother and father-in-law, just a fireplace bellows. Years ago, when my boys were little, they got a pots and pans music set. I think one looked like a drum, the other looked like a guitar, and they would play with that. And so I said, I need something that looks more like a real guitar. And so what I did is I went down the basement and threw a crude-looking toy guitar together and brought it up and gave it to them. And it just so happened that around that time period, I subscribed to Wood magazine, and they had a toy contest. And so I thought, I killed 2 birds with 1 stone here, and so I took 2nd place in the amateur division. So I have a drill press and a joiner because of it. We have 3 sons, Nicholas, Austin, and Andrew. Andrew was the middle son, and he became interested in playing in a band. Him and his friend started a band at the high school. They were big enough to where they could tour different continents, and after a while he left that band and joined up with the Ghost Inside, and that seemed a better fit for him, and he's done quite well with that. And 2015 their band was touring from Lubbock, Texas to I think a place in Arizona maybe, and their bus was in an accident. They hit a semi head on, and both drivers were killed, and everybody in the band and their crew were injured some pretty severely, and Andrew was one of the severe ones, and he had quite a few injuries, and his leg was pretty much mutilated, and it was starting to get really bad, and a pretty rough thing to go through. And I would have never guessed that we would be in a situation where his mother and I would have to make the decision to go to the doctors and tell him to take his leg. But if we wouldn't have done that, he might not be here. So that's a pretty tough thing, and you never know how he's going to take it, but we couldn't worry about that. And the good news of the story is that he did survive. You know, many people lose their kids in an accident like that, but he did survive, and he had the most positive attitude that you could ever ask for. So our decision for them to remove his leg, that eased all the stress that we had for making that decision, and he took that away from us. So that during that time, you know, we had a lot of time to think. We went down to El Paso where the accident was, and we were there with him for a month as he was recovering from the accident. And you know, right away his mother and I said he'll never drum again. And you know, we just assumed that we were wondering if he was going to live. But so me and my creative side, I'm starting to think, how's this going to work, you know? And from the start, I thought we have to somehow bring the pedal up to his residual limb after he had his leg amputated. We have to bring that pedal up, and I didn't know how I was going to do it. But that was the direction I thought of. There was a lot of people on his side, and he had a wonderful group of people in Grand Rapids. Mary Freebed in Grand Rapids is where he spent the next bit of time. I can't remember if it was a month there or not, but his doctor was a drummer, so he was real passionate about getting Andrew back to drumming. But their way of fixing something like that would make a special prosthetic, which they did. Andrew worked at it. He did the best he could with it. And one day he said to me, I can't do this anymore. It's just not working. And it was pretty sad moment. But then it clicked in my mind. It's like, okay, go time. I said, I'm heading to the garage, and I just took regular household construction materials and put together a device that I had thought made sense for doing it the way I did it, and put it together. And I took it down and assembled it to his practice drum kit, and he hopped on that and started playing. He turned and looked at me and smiled and gave me the thumbs up, and it was a very emotional moment. And he knew, and I knew, and his mother knew that we might be onto something here. And so from that point on, that was just the prototype. And while it did work, we had some tweaking to do on it, and so we made improvements, and yeah, it worked. One thing that I can say about the way that I do my making is you can become paralyzed if you try to think all the details through. And in that case, it's like, I'm just going to throw something together. And then, you know, from there, you revise it. So there are a couple things that we needed to do. Like we made the pad smaller. This was too bulky. On that one, it couldn't fit in between the snare and the tom. And so we reduced the size up here. And then his anatomy, the way his legs sit, he straddles the snare drum, And so his leg was at an angle, so we had to take this pad and angle it over. It's a little bit awkward the way but it does the job. Transfers the motion from his residual limb down to the pedal. But it really isn't that complex. It's just a simple idea. They started to see that there's a future. And then so from that point on, they worked towards doing their first show, and they were just going to do one show and see how it went. And nobody knew how that would go. And we flew out to Los Angeles, and it was at the Shrine Auditorium, and they put on a phenomenal show. And it was, I'll tell you, the big moment was right before they were getting ready to go on stage. His mother and I were there by him. He'd never been nervous, but he was quite nervous because this is the first time getting back and without a leg. And we were backstage, and we just looked at each other. A few tears were shed, and we didn't say anything. We just looked at each other. We knew what each other was thinking, and it's like, but it's really inspirational to see. He was nervous as heck, and once he got started playing, then it was all just back to the game. You know, it all went away, and it was back to normal for him. So it was really inspirational. They just got done with a tour in South America, their first tour in South America, and I think the end of April they start their next tour in the U.S. They had the opportunity to go to South America recently, and he was doing a show in Bogota, Colombia, and this young man comes up to him, and he's an amputee, and he found out that he's an amputee drummer. And come to find out, his dad had seen the device that I created for Andrew to drum with. His dad replicated that, and this kid drums with a device like that. The gentleman in Colombia is benefited from it. Yeah, it's cool that you know it's a good enough idea that it can work for people. You know, it makes me feel proud. It's kind of a weird feeling. You know, I'm proud, and yet sometimes it's almost, I don't know if I'm embarrassed, but it's like I don't want the notoriety of it or whatever. I want that all to go to Andrew. Years ago, I was featured in an article in our local paper, and they were asking me, it was like a kind of a over-the-phone interview, what I like doing, and I said I like working with my hands. So, I mean, it goes back that far. You know, some people, I know when I was getting ready to retire, a lot of people said, well, aren't you going to get bored? Or somebody that does this kind of stuff, you're never going to get bored. There's always something to do, and if you don't have anything, you'll find something. And so I know that till the day I can't do it, I'm going to be making things, you know, because it's just what I do.
He lost his right leg in an accident. Most drummers would have said, I'm done. Not him and not his dad. They made that happen, and we're here tonight.